Welcoming us to begin together, page 141 in our Siddur. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ya la 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 141 Vani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov chastecha Aneni be'emet ishecha. We'll go to the morning blessings beginning on page 151. It's a custom to stand here, to gather ourselves in together, to awaken our awareness of this day and of our community together. Page 151. L'shem yichud kudsha brichu shchintei ani mukhan umezuman lekabel alai mitzvat haseshel ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ubizchut zef tachpi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim hamavir sheina me'enai utnuma me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim hanoten lesech v'bina le'avchin ben yom uben laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim oter Yisrael betifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim she'asani betzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim she'asani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei olamim anoten layaev koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhma galui v'yedach. Baruch atah Adonai rofecho basar umafli la'asot. 165 Eloi neshama shenatata bi tehora hi ata verata ata yitzarta ata nefachta bi ta meshamra b'kirbi v'atadlila limeni l'chayei olam. כל זמן שהנשמה בקרבי מודעני לפניך אדוני אלוהי ואלוהי אבותיי ואמותיי ריבון כל המעשים אדון כל הנשמות. ברוך אתה אדוני אשר בידו נפש כל חי ורוח כל בשר.
We'll continue together on page 175 for the psalm for dedicating our space together. The two lines that are transliterated, which correspond to the fifth and the third line in the Hebrew from the bottom. Elecha Adonai ekra ve'el Adonai etchanan. Elecha Adonai ekra ve'el Adonai etchanan. Shema Adonai v'choneni, Adonai heye ozer li. Shema Adonai v'choneni, Adonai heye ozer li. Elecha Adonai ekra ve'el Adonai etchanan. הפכת מספידי למחולי, פיתחת שכי ותזרני שמחה, למען יזמרך כבוד ולא ידום, אדוני אלוהי, לעולם אודך. 177, ברוך שאמר, והיה העולם, ברוך הוא, ברוך עושה בראשית, ברוך שמו, ברוך אומר ועושה, ברוך הוא, ברוך גוזר ומקיים, ברוך שמו, ברוך מרחם על הארץ, ברוך הוא, ברוך מרחם על הבריות, ברוך שמו, ברוך משלם שכר טוב לרעיו, ברוך הוא, ברוך מעביר אפלה ומביא אורה, ברוך שמו, ברוך הילד וקיים לנצח, ברוך הוא, ברוך פודה ומציל, ברוך הוא וברוך שמו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, עליו הרחמן ומעולל בפי עמו, משובח ומפואר. יחיד חי העולמים, מלך משובח ומפואר עדי עד שמו הגדול, ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מהולל בתשבחות. Join me please, page 201. הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו, הודו לאלוהי האלוהים, כי לעולם חסדו, הודו לאדוני האדונים, כי לעולם לעושה נפלאות גדולות לבדו, כי לעולם חסדו, לעושה השמיים בתבונה, כי לעולם, כי לעולם, לרוקרץ על המים, כי לעולם, כי לעולם, לעושה אורים גדולים, כי לעולם, עושה אורים גדולים, כי לעולם חסדו, לילה 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 לילה, כי לעולם חסדו, לילה 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 לילה, כי לעולם את השמש לממשלת ביום, את הירח וכוכבים לממשלות בלילה, כי לעולם חס שבשפלנו זכר לנו, כי לעולם ויפרקנו מצרינו, כי לעולם לילה 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 לילה, כי לעולם חסדו, לילה לילה תן לחם לכל בשר, כי לעולם הודו לאל השמיים, כי לעולם חסדו, הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו, הודו לאלוהי האלוהים, כי לעולם חסדו, הלילה כי לעולם חסדו, הלילה כי לעולם חסדו. Let's go together to the last verse of the Psalms. We have many more Psalms to chant together this morning. For now, just to page 231. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehalel ya, hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehalel ya, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen. Baruch Adonai mitzion, shochen Yerushalayim, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim, Elohei Yisrael, oseh niflaot levado. Baruch Shem kevodo leolam, v'yimaleh כבודו את כל הארץ, אמן ואמן. We'll continue page 241. This is the first time in the morning today we begin to insert a special melody to recognize this is Shabbat, but also Yom Tov today, the end of the festival. Lai, 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 האל ותעצומות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך יושב על כיסא רם ונישא, שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני, לישרים נאווה תהילה, בפי שרים תתרומם, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתקדש, ובקרב קדושים תתהלל. 243 ובמחלות רבבות, עמך בית ישראל. ברינה יתבשכם חן מלכנו בכל דור ודור, שכן חובת כל היצורים לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו. להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל, לכולס, כל דברי שירות ותשבחות דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו אלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו. שירו שבח הלל וזמרה, עוז וממשלה, נצח גדולה, גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות. ברכות תפילות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודאות אדוני נפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך ערכי העולמים. I just want to give a chance for a deep breath as the words go flying by. We've now completed our preparation, so just a chance to settle into ourselves even a little bit more here in this space together, to feel the joy of being together in community and to delight in the final hours of this mighty festival of ours, this Pesach festival. And to continue now, page 245. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עלמי, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא, ואמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. 249, הכל יודוך ועל כל ישבחוך ועל כל יאמרו אין קדוש כאדוני, על כל יאמרו מחסלה יוצר הכל. 249, last lines. המאיר לארץ ולדרים עליה ברחמים, ובטובו מחדש בכל יום תמיד, מעשה וראשית. Next page. המלך המרום לבדו, אין קרקך ואין זולתך, אפס בלתך ומדומה לך. אין קרקך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי העולם הבא. אפס בלתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך, מושיענו לחיי עולמים. 253. אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה, גודלו וטובו מלא עולם, דת ותבונה סובבים אותו, המתגאה לחיות הקודש ונדר בכבוד, על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו, טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יצרה בדעת, בבינה ובחסקל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם, להיות ומושלים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה נעזיבם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בהם הרצון קונם, פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו, צהלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו, קרא השמש ויזרח אורה והתקין סורת הלבנה שבח נותנים לו כל צבע מרום תפארת וגדולה שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש הלילה Angelic friends moving forward together. Or chadash at Zion ta'ir v'nizkachu lanu b'mehera leoro Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'meorot. 273. Ahavara ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla gedola vitera Chamalta aleinu Avinu malkeinu Bavur avotenu v'imotenu Shebatchu v'cha Avinu malkeinu Vatlamdem chukei chaim Ken techonenu tlamdenu Avinu avarachaman Amrachem rachem aleinu Avinu avarachaman Amrachem rachem aleinu V'ten belibenu le'avinu le'askil lishmoa Lilmod u'lelamed Lishmor ve'lasot Lasot u'lekayen Et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha Lishmor ve'lasot Lekayem et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha Be'ahava Le'ha'erinenu beToratecha Le'dabek libenu b'mitzvotecha Ve'yached levavenu Le'ahava u'yirat shemecha Ve'lo nevosh Ve'lo nikalem Ve'lo nikashel Le'olam ha'ed Ki v'shem kodshecha הגדול והנורא בטחנו נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו כי אל פועל ישועות אתה וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Some time for quiet now with your own prayers here in the middle of the Shema. והיה שמוע תשמעו מצוותיו. בכם עצרת השמיים. למען יראו ימיכם וימי בניכם על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני. כי ימי השמיים על הארץ, ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר על בני ישראל ואמרת להם לצון ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בצל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו. מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. ויציב ונכון וקיים וישר ונאמן וטוב ויפה הדבר הזה. 287. על אבותינו ועל אמותינו ועלינו ועל בנינו ועל דורותינו ועל כל דורות זרע ישראל עבדיך, על הראשונים ועל האחרונים. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו, גואלנו גואל אמותינו, צורנו צור ישועתנו, פודנו מצילנו מעולם הוא שמך. אין אלוהים זולתך. זאת שיבחו אהובים ורוממו אל ונתנו ידידים זמירות שירות ותשבחות. Continuing 291. תהילות לאל עליון ברוך הוא מבורך, משה ומרים ובני ישראל לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים, לשמחה לשמחה על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובטחי נאומך Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. 327. The special Amidah for Yom Tov. Ki Shem Adonai Ekra Havu Godel Leloheinu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Eloi Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Koneh Hakol, Ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. 335. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה כל חי ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות כל חי. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי כל חי. נריצך ונקדישך כסוד שיח שר וקודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא עולם, משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו לעומתם. ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו. ממקומו יפן ברחמים ויחונם המייחדים שמו, ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים באהבה, פעמיים באהבה. שמע אומרים, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. הוא אלוהינו, אבינו, מלכנו, ישמיענו, ישמיענו ברחמיו, שנית, 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 שנית לעיני כל חי. להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מדיר שמך בכל הארץ. והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. אתה תנו עשית. חג המצות הזה. ועשיינו אדוני אלוהינו. מודיעים I want to ask us to come together into a priestly blessing this morning as the close, the seal to our Amidah. And so invite us to stand together. I always feel that this beautiful formula is maybe the oldest formula that we have in our traditions. We know that, as far as we know, it was recited all the way back in temple times and since then. And it would be especially meaningful for us to hear at the time of a festival when our ancestors would have gone to that central place to make their offerings. And so we do as well. And maybe why has this beautiful little perfect haiku of a prayer stood the test of time? Because it speaks directly to the heart of our prayers, which is always for peace. So let's stand together for a moment and first bring to mind your own inner circle, your own holy of holies, the people that are dearest to you, and send them your blessings for peace. And now, as a community of priests, to extend our consciousness beyond our own inner circle of loved ones to a wider circle. Perhaps it's to our community, to our country, and send our prayers for peace in those directions. And finally, to wherever in the world we want to send our prayers for peace. To tune our antennas in those directions as we say these ancient words. Yivarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha ken yehi ratzon Yair Adonai panav elecha vichuneka ken yehi ratzon Isa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom shalom ken yehi ratzon. We can take our seats for a moment. We include Halal today, the collection of psalms that we reserve for these special times. And just reminding us again about the way we can link Halal at the end of Pesach to the Seder in particular, which is, remember everybody, I like to say this every year because I find it so meaningful myself, the custom of taking the 10 drops of wine from our cups, like a little bit less joy, even on the Seder night, since our experience of redemption came at the cost of other lives, even according to our ancient sacred myth. It happened that way. And the custom is to say a partial Hallel, a chetzi Hallel, like a half Hallel, all during the days of Pesach, and even on the final day is a little bit diminished. And then when we come to page 361, which our tradition, Psalm 114, which our tradition refers to as Hallel HaMitzri, the Egyptian Hallel, because it recounts the exodus from Egypt, which we are celebrating this week. We'll chant it in this melody that, again, just for explanation, this melody that sounds to us like Echa, but which was somehow transmitted from somewhere, perhaps from Jerusalem, all the way to a church in Morocco. and discovered that when the leaders in that church chanted this psalm in Latin, they used that melody. So join me, please, back on page 357 in this mixture of celebration and acknowledging loss, and we'll stand together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likro et Halal. Hallelujah. Hallelujah avdei Adonai, hallelujah et Shem Adonai mevorach, me'ata ve'ad olam, mimizrach shemet ad mevo. Last lines, mekimim me'afarda, me'ashpot yarim evion, lo shivim nedivim, im nedive amo, moshivi aker et habayit, Em abanim smecha, hallelujah. Betzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Bet Yaakov me'am loez, Hayta Yehuda lekodsho, Yisrael mamshelotav, Hayam rav hayanos, hayarden yisov lecho, He'arim rakdu chelim, gevaot kivnei tzon, Malech hayam kitanus, hayarden yisov lecho, He'arim tirkedu chelim, gevaot Netzon, milifnei Adon chuli aretz, milifnei Eloha Yaakov, haofchi hatzora gamayim, chalamish lemayno mayim. 365. Adonai zacharanu yevarech, Yevarech et Beit Yisrael, Yevarech et Beit Aharon, Yevarech Yirei Adonai Haktanim. Yosef Adonai Alechem, Alechem ve'obenechem, Beruchim atem Adonai, Oseh Shamayim Shamayim Adonai, Natan livnei Adam, lo ametzim Hallelujah, ve'lo kol yodei duma, v'anachnu nevarech ya, me'ata ve'ad olam, me'ata ve'ad olam, Hallelujah. 371. Hallelujah Adonai kol goyim, shabechu kol haomim, ki gavad aleinu chasto ve'emet, Adonai le'olam hallelujah. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasdo. Yam bam 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 bye bye, yam bam 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 bye, Yomana Yisrael. Yam bam 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 bye bye, yam bam 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 bye, ki le'olam chasdo. Yam bam 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 bye bye, yam bam 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 bye. Romurna vetaron. Yam bam 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 bye bye, yam bam 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 bye. Kile olam chasdo. Yomruna, yomruna. Yireh Adonai. Kile olam chasdo. Hodu l'Adonai. Ki tov. Kile olam chasdo. Yam bam 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 bye bye, yam bam 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 bye. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov. Yam bam 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 bye bye, yam bam 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 bye. Ki le'olam chasdo. 373. Min hamitzar karatia anani v'merchavia min hamitzar karatia anani v'merchavia Ozi vezimratia vayehi lishua Ozi vezimratia vayehi lishua Ozi vezimratia vayehi lishua Ozi vezimratia vayehi lishua 375, third full line. Join me, please. Lo amut ki echye v'asaper ma'aseya yasor Yisraniya ve'lamavet lo netanani pitchu li Sha'arei tzedek avo v'amodea pitchu li Sha'arei tzedek avo v'amodea Adonai tzadikim yavo'u bo zeh ashar l'Adonai tzadikim yavo'u bo Odecha ki anitani v'tehi li lishua Odecha ki anitani v'tehi li Even masu habonim hayta lerosh pina Even masu habonim hayta lerosh pina met Adonai hayta zot hi niflat beinenu met Adonai hayta zot hi niflat beinenu ze hayom asa Adonai nagila veni ונשמחה בו. זה היום עשה אדוני, נגילה ונשמחה בו. אנא אדוני הושיענה, אנא אדוני הושיענה. אנא אדוני הצליחנה, אנא אדוני הצליחנה. 379. ברוך הבא בשם אדוני, ברכנוכם מבית אדוני. אל אדוני ויעל לנו, איסרו חג באבותים עד קרנות המזבח. אלי אתה ועודך, אלוהי ארוממך. 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 הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו, כי לך טוב להודות ולשמחנה לזמר, כי מעולם עד עולם אתה אל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מעולה בתשבחות. We can be seated. Page 381. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיידך בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יש שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתבואר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריך. לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותון ובאות תהון לכל בית ישראל, קודם אבון די וישמעיה ואמרו אמן. יש למה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. אמן. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Chag Sameach. Yeah, I was going to say, boy, it's what a gift to be able to be in Eretz Yisrael. And like Dorothy says, there's no place like home. So today is kind of a smorgasbord of things happening all at once, partially because of what the Jewish calendar dictates, and partially because of our own attempt at a creative solution. So it's like the 7th day of Pesach, which really was yesterday, today, in terms of what we're chanting and observing, and it's also Shabbat, which means we had Halal, and we'll also have Yizkor today. And I'd like to share a few thoughts with you before the Torah reading, and some special extra chanting to lead us into the Torah reading.
I don't know where my Torah is.
So we've just now completed that special collection of psalms that make up Halal, another example of biblical poetry turned into liturgy, where we take the ancient words and make them into living prayer. So I ask us to hold on to the echoes of those psalm verses, let them kind of echo around inside of us, while we now turn to the biblical readings for this special day, and welcome the opportunity to hear portions from each of the 3 major sections of the Hebrew Bible. Today we're going to hear from the Torah, from the prophets, and also from the writings, although not in that order. It's our custom to introduce the Torah reading on festival days
My
with
audio?
the assigned festival Megillah
Oh.
or scroll. And so for today, that means the Song of Songs. That's the other piece of the banquet today, the feast that we have, because the custom in many communities is to read Song of Songs on Chol HaMoed, Shabbat Chol HaMoed, which there wasn't really this year because the holiday began on Shabbat and ends on Shabbat. So I'm not letting go of Shir HaShirim. So it's going to have to today be also Chol HaMoed Shabbat. So we'll begin in just a moment with some verses from the Song of Songs, and from there we'll continue with readings from this week's regular Shabbat parasha Acharei Mot, and then to a special reading from Exodus, the Shirah, the Song of the Sea, which we read on the 7th day of Pesach, and then finally to the words from the book of prophets, which will be attributed to King David in the 2nd book of Samuel. There was just a thought I wanted to say, and it went by, and it's gone. Okay. So I want to just reflect with you a bit on these 3 offerings before we hear them read out loud. I'm feeling a little bit raw in my voice this morning. I'm not sure why, because I've been singing for 3 months, I can promise you. But I'm just aware as I say this, the Hebrew word likro is to read and to call, which is a recognition that in ancient times, to read usually meant to read out loud. My dad likes to tell the story of some important person in history, I don't remember who it was, who took a long time to return a letter that he had received and started out by saying, "I'm sorry it's taken me so long to respond. I have a sore throat," meaning I have a sore throat from reading your letter. And we uphold that tradition in our public readings. We understand that to read is to read out loud. And that means that for those of us who are listening, it's an active kind of listening, as if each of us ourselves were vocalizing the words. So not a passive listening. And we'll also have a chance to chant together part of the Torah reading today. So one of the things I just loved doing on this sabbatical was writing about the experiences we were having, and I couldn't help making today into a little bit of a post, like a post-blog post. So at the Seder this year, Jonathan and I sat with our youngest Israeli niece and her husband and his extended family, who were very gracious, most gracious, in inviting us to their home at a religious moshav outside of Tel Aviv. And I want to give you the whole picture, just to give you the build-up to where I'm going here. So bear with me. We arrived early with plenty of time to park our car outside. We had been told, oh, leave hours to make what should be a 1-hour trip because the traffic is going to be terrible. So we got there plenty early so that we could park our car outside the Moshav gates, which were going to be shut and locked before sundown to allow only for pedestrian traffic inside. We entered the family home, which was already completely beautifully arrayed for the Seder, down to the flowers on the table. And we joined the matriarch and patriarch of the family, our niece's in-laws, in the kitchen to help with last-minute business, peeling eggs. We even had a little pre-Seder coffee hour, which is such a good idea. At least a glass of wine, something. So people who sit up into the night singing and studying need a little snack before you start. A few of us walked over to the Moshav synagogue to join in the evening service, which I have never done. I've never been to Mariv on Erev Pesach. Have any of you? I'm just curious. Anybody who goes to Mariv on Erev Pesach? Michael Ackerman, Mazel. Kol HaKavod. At least somebody around here does. I was saying to Jonathan, the evening service on Leil HaSeder, the night of the Seder, also has beautiful liturgy in it, but most people don't hear it because we're busy getting ready for the Seder, or at least I usually am. So it was a real treat to go to this shul on the Moshav. It's a traditional shul, so the men sat in the center, and the women sat behind the mechitza, where we could see and hear, but not be seen or heard too much. We joined with the community in a really, lebedich, like feisty Halal, following the evening Amidah, and then we all reconvened as a group and walked back to the house, finally sitting down at the table with our Haggadot well after sundown. Okay, so that's the scene. So these are serious people. They know what they're doing. As the Seder progressed to the recitation of the 10 plagues, one family member looked up and protested, "What kind of tradition is this where we glorify the death of the firstborn? Or anyone, for that matter?" The patriarch of the family, our niece's father-in-law, shrugged and acknowledged the question and said, "I don't know, ask Rachel." Then he turned his gaze on me. And like an embarrassed kid who has been daydreaming during class when the teacher calls on her, I stared back like deer in the headlights and said, really very lamely, "I don't have an answer. I don't know." Some rabbi, great. I promised I would think about it and come back with a better response. The truth is that I had been sitting with my Haggadah while they were all talking about this and decoding a commentary in the Haggadah that I had, which was about the mitzvah of circumcision, which the editor of my Haggadah included to try and explain the enigmatic moment with Sipporah. Remember this enigmatic moment in the Torah when Sipporah actually circumcises her son, and she makes this recitation over drops of her son's circumcision blood, in which she proclaims, "You are now a bridegroom of blood to me." A verse that readers of the Torah have been trying to figure out for, at least 2,000 years. Since that verse is juxtaposed in the Torah, it's right next to the promise that God will come and kill the firstborn children, we can only understand this as a moment of maternal ferocity, as if she's saying, "You will not mess with my child. I will do whatever is needed to ensure his life, to establish him in the covenant of life." Life and death, and the thin boundary between them, are central to the story and the celebration of Pesach. You can definitely say the same for other holidays in the Jewish cycle, for sure, about Yom Kippur, but especially on Pesach. Think about it. The story begins with the evil decree by Pharaoh to kill all Hebrew baby boys, and then culminates with the terrible final plague, the death of the firstborn, from which, of course, the Hebrews are saved by marking their doorposts with lamb's blood on the same night they make their escape to the sea. and even at the sea. While the Hebrews crossed to safety, the Egyptians drowned in the chase. As I thought about all of this at the Seder and afterwards, I also thought about our visit. Jonathan and I made a visit to the cemetery at my sister-in-law's kibbutz, where Jonathan's parents and his younger sister Rivka's ashes are buried. We stood together with Jonathan's two living Israeli sisters, Ruthie and Debbie, remembering Bernard and Florence, my in-laws and Rivka, all of blessed memory, and sharing some memories of their lives. And when my sisters-in-law asked me if I had something I could sing, I thought of the verse from Song of Songs. Simeni kachotam al libecha, simeni, make me, place me, set me as a seal al libecha, on your heart. Kachotam al zeroecha, as a seal on your arm. Ki azah kamavet ahava. Just say those words with me. Ki azah kamavet ahava. Ki azah kamavet ahava. For love is strong as death. Love is strong as death. And then skipping ahead to the next verse, Mayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabot et ha'ahava. Mayim rabim, the great waters, cannot suppress love. Neither can the waters drown it. So for sure, these verses have inspired so much different commentary by readers over the generations. I understand it to mean this: love is powerful enough to sustain us through moments when we stand close to death. Our own death or another's, powerful enough to strengthen us to face death and the grief that it provokes. Love is live. Just change one vowel and you see how they're almost the same word. When we bury a loved one, we say that it is in fact the greatest act of love, an act that cannot be reciprocated, and so it's done in pure service to another. You're probably familiar with the discussion recorded in the Talmud about the canonization of the Hebrew Bible in about the 1st century CE, where the sages argued what's going to make it into the Hebrew Bible before we seal it. They debate over which scrolls to include. You may remember a teaching that I came across, and I've shared with the community a few times, from Nehemiah Poland, who describes before the Hebrew Bible was canonized and before printing, evolved into later stages, the scrolls were each individual scrolls. Genesis, Exodus, Shir HaShirim, and they would be maybe carried around in a pouch so they could jostle around together and maybe even be out of order. So in this case, they're debating specifically over whether the Song of Songs should be included. After all, one of them says, and I'm paraphrasing here, it isn't exactly family friendly. It sometimes has erotic depictions of a love relationship between two hypothetical lovers, and certainly has graphic mention of certain body parts. To which Rabbi Akiba famously says, this scroll, Shir HaShirim, is in fact holier than the Torah itself, and is Kodesh Kodashim, he says. It is the Holy of Holies, making the analogy with the inner chamber of the temple, into which the priest would go for the most intimate communion with God. This communion was considered so powerful that the people would wait to hear the priest's voice to know that he survived the encounter. So why does Akiva make this dramatic statement? Is it because the text of Shir HaShirim is a metaphor for the love relationship between God and Israel, as so many have taught? Maybe so. But I think there's another reason, and that is that Shir HaShirim is a tonic against the troubling glorification of death in the Exodus story that my Seder companion questioned. Shir HaShirim is meant to be read as a midrash on the book of Exodus, a kind of poetic filter to the basic story in the Torah. So when we come to the death of infant Hebrews as the story opens and arrive at the 10th plague at its climax, we're meant to drink it down with the chaser of Shir HaShirim as well. We're meant to neutralize the terror of that story with this profound statement about love, which is that love is strong as death. Love is strong as death. Death is a part of life, for sure. But by reminding ourselves of the covenant of love, which is at the core of Jewish theology, and I wanted especially today in our prayers to sing extra when we got to Ahava Rabbah, the passage that comes before the Shema, and then Ve'ahavta, that comes right after the Shema. The Shema, the central declaration of Jewish faith, is bracketed in love. Reminding ourselves of that core theology, we affirm our commitment to life, to our love of life, to do our best to love what is and to summon love when we face death. Rabbi Akiva fought for the inclusion of Shir HaShirim in the Tanakh, I believe, so that we, generations of Jewish families and people sitting at seders where we retell the story with its multiple moments of death, will remember that we are a tradition that loves life. And in doing so, we affirm life. We don't stop at the story of death. And we soften the intensity of it by affirming life. So I'd like to turn to a few verses from Shir HaShirim, which are printed in our Siddur. This section does not have the passage that I just mentioned, the passage, love is strong as death, but will at least connect us with this scroll. So we'll bring this now as a few verses before we turn to the Torah. Today's Torah reading, which will follow the regular weekly rhythm, is Acharei Mot, from Acharei Mot. Acharei Mot, after the death of Aaron's sons. So that's where the Torah is picking up now, again, with an awareness of the reality of death and the irrepressible human impulse to keep moving forward. And then finally to King David in the Haftara. With the Exodus, the Song of the Sea in the middle. Page 15 in the Siddur. And if you're familiar with the chant for this scroll, please join me. Shir HaShirim asher lishlomo, yishakeni mineshikot pihu, כי טובים דודיך מיין, לריח שמניך טובים, שמן תורק שמך, על כן עולמות אהבוך. מושכני אחריך נרוצה, הביאני המלך חדריו. נגילה ונשמחה בך, נזכירה דודיך מיין משרים אהבוך. אנא דודי ואמר לי, קומי לך, רעייתי יפתי ולכי לך, כי הנה הסתיו עבר, הגשם חלף הלך לו, הניצנים נראו בארץ, את הזמיר הגיע, וכל התור נשמע בארצנו. התאנה חנתה פגיה, והגפנים סמדר נתנו ריח. קומי לך, רעייתי יפתי ולכי לך. יונתי בחגבי הסלע, בסתר המדרגה, הראיני את מראייך, השמיני את קולך, כי קולך ערב ומראייך נווה. אחזו לנו שועלים, שועלים קטנים, מחבלים כרמים, וכרמנו סמדר. דודי לי ואני לא, הרואה בשושנים, עד שיפוח היום ונסו הצלילים. סוף דמי לך דודי לצבי, לעופר איילים על הרי ותר. Turn now to our Torah service and ask Ethel Kessler and Carol Bearmott to come forward to open the Ark. Page 383 in the Siddur. אין כמוך ואלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותי כל העמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. על הרחמים היטיבה לרצונך את ציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים. כי לך לבד בטחנו, מלך אלוהינו אדון עולמים. ויהי בנשוא אהרון ויאמר משה, open all the way, קומה אדוני וירוצו אויביך וינוסו בשדך כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. Join me, okay? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shemo. Gadol Adonai iti uneromema. This is the first. Yasher Koach to Carol and to Ethel. You can take this away. Yes. Are you going to be Gabbai? So again, a few verses from this week's parasha to keep us in, this is what I wanted to say very briefly, to keep us in the rhythm of the weekly Torah readings. Where did the cover? No,
It's in the drawer.
oh. That's it. Thank you.
Bob.
Thank you. I want, bear with me, I just want to say one quick thing. In the juggling of, well, what day is it? Is it the last day of Pesach? Is it Shabbat? Is it the 8th day? Is it Tuesday? Like, what are we supposed to eat anyway? One of the things that the early founders of the Reconstructionist movement chose in how we would organize our relationship, our movement's relationship with the Jewish calendar, was to follow the spiritual calendar of Israel, which is the spiritual calendar of the Torah. So we observe 7 days. So normally we would have most of what we're doing today on the 7th day, which was yesterday, which we moved today simply so that more people could participate together in community. And because today is the 8th day, which many communities in the diaspora are observing as Yom Tov anyway. So we felt like we had a little license to work there. But the important thing here is to note our connection with the original calendar laid out in the Torah, and with Eretz Yisrael, which observes that calendar today. So in the state of Israel and in other diaspora communities that follow that schedule, they're also reading Parashat Acharei Mot today to keep up with the regular rhythm. That's it. The Torah reading will begin, page numbers are on here. We're beginning with Leviticus 18, verse 24. For Yad.
Thank you.
Yad.
ויעזור ויגן ויושעך החוסים בו ונאמר אמן. הקום הגודל והנוצנו כבוד לתורה תעמודנה Joan Kahn. His name I'll learn in just a minute. Yeah. You know Rivka bat Mordechai v'Masha Ngami Harishona Baruch Shanatan Torah L'mo Yisrael B'Tushato V'atem Adlikim B'Na'echem Chaim Kulchem Hayom.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorah.
Baruch Adonai Barach Elam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorah Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirvanu lavodato v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Page 778 in the Plout, if you're looking there. Leviticus 18:24.
Amen. Al titnu b'chol eile, ki b'chol eile nitmu hagoyim, asher ani mishalech min pnechem, v'tima haaretz v'evkod avona aleha, v'taki haaretz et yishveha, v'shmartem atem, et chukotai v'et mishpatai, v'lo tasu mikol ha'toivot, asher Ha'ele ha'ezrach v'hager hagar b'tochachem, ki ekol ha'toivot ha'el asu ha'anshei ha'aretz asher lifnechem, v'titma ha'aretz v'titma ha'aretz.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan v'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher koach to Gil. And just a moment to acknowledge Joan, who's always welcome on this bima for an honor, and who asked to come here this morning, especially as she makes her way to the unveiling for Len in the coming weeks, and to hold his memory dearly for you and for Jeffrey and for all of us. So, Zichrono Livracha and L'chaim.
Yes.
Is there a second Aliyah?
Yes, it's written here.
Oh, it's written here.
Ami is the second of it.
Okay.
Ami mi beit.
Yeah. So, okay. Ya'amod, Ami mibet, Yossi Daviva L'Aliyah Hashniya. One sec.
First touch the
He's going to show you the spot. Touch that with your tongue.
Baruch hu Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirvanu lavodato v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'lo taki ha'aretz echem v'tamachem ota כאשר קאה את הגוי אשר לפניכם, כי כל אשר יעשה מכל התועבות האלה, ונכרתו הנפשות העושות מקרב עמם, ושמרתם את משמרתי. לבלתי עשות בחוקת התועבות אשר נעשו לפניכם, ולא תטמאו בהם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Wonderful to have you here, Ami. Just pause before we lift this Torah and go to the other scroll and hear Hannah Weisberger chant the Shirah with us. Take a moment here for prayers for healing. I want to just do this a little bit differently today. So to bring to mind whoever it is that's in your prayers for healing. And I know we're sitting in different configurations, like some people have someone next to them, some people don't. But if it's possible for each of us to find someone to say the name of the person that's in our prayers out loud to someone else in the room, just to share the name out loud. So find a person if you're saying a prayer for someone, and let's all stand together for a moment. And just say their name and their relationship to you. Are they a parent, a child, a relative? And just take a moment to look around and make sure you give a chance for anybody near you to say. So in strength for all of us who are praying for those whose we've named and for their path towards healing, let's join together. Mi sheberach avotenu mekor havracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor havracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Yamot hamagbiya l'sefer rishon, tamot hagomeret l'sefer rishon.
Ask us to stay standing as we lift the Torah.
Harry and Nancy, where did they go?
Nancy Solomon and Harry Schomburg. They're coming.
Okay, okay, good.
Are you lifting? Have you done this before? Are you familiar with what to do? Yeah. Okay.
There you go, I'm sorry. Bend your knees.
Push down and then push down. Right.
Touching places down there.
וזאת התורה, and then comes אשר שם משה לפני עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה וטובה מאושר. עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר. דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. You can be seated.
We are moving to the Shirah. Here it is. The Shirah is on, well, okay, I guess.
Exodus 15.
The Shirah is Exodus 15. We'll find you a page number in a minute, but now let's call Carol. Ta'amod zisol bat David v'Rivka hamaftira. And we still need a page number. Anyone have some page numbers for the Shirah? Oh, you have them.
1 second. So, 1 second. Just hang on 1 sec. We're going to read in just a moment. 1 second, 1 second. Okay, give me 1 second. Here it is. So if you're in the newer edition of the Plowed Chumash, it's 438. And if you're in the older version, it's 488. Either way, Exodus chapter 15. And I just want to acknowledge, as Chana gets ready to read, and we have a chance to honor Carol, we're reading from the Survivor Scroll. This is the Shabbat that will come into the week that we observe Yom Hashoah. And so just to keep that especially in our minds on this day as we read the crossing of the Red Sea. When Carol is finished with the blessing, it's a custom to rise together for the recitation of the Red Sea, and we'll join with you on the appropriate verses.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Kervanu Lavodato V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אמן. אז ישיר משה ובני ישראל את השירה הזאת לאדוני, ויאמרו לאמור, השיר על אדוני כי גאוגה, סוס ורוכבו רמה בים, עוזי בזמרת יביא לי לישועה, זה אלי וענווהו, אלוהי אבי, וארוממנו. אדוני איש מלחמה, אדוני שמו, מרכבות פרעה, וחילו ירה בים, ומבחר שלישיו טובעו בים סוף, תהומות יחסיומו, ירדו במצולות כמו אבן. ימינך אדוני נהדרי בכוח, ימינך אדוני תרעץ אויב. וברוב גאונך תהרוס קמך, תשלח ארונך יאכלמו כקש, וברוח אפיך נאר מומים, ניצבו כמונד נזלים, כפאו תהומות בלב ים. אמר אויב ארדוף אשיג, אחלק שלל, תמלאמו נפשי, אריק חרבי, תורישמו ידי. נשבת ברוחך כיסמו ים, צללו כעופרת במים אדירים. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. נטית ימינך, תבלעמו ארץ, נחית בחסדך, עמזו גאלת, נהלת בעוזך אל נווה קודשך, שמעו עמים ירגזון, חיל אחז יושבי פלשת, אז נבהלו אלופי אדום, אלי מואב יוחזמו רעד. נמוגו כל יושבי חנן, תיפול עליהם אימתה ופחד, בגדול זרועך ידמו כאבן. עד יעבור עמך אדוני, עד יעבור עמזו קנית. תביאמו ותתאמו בהר נחלתך, מכון לשבטך פעלת אדוני. מקדש אדוני כוננו ידיך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. כי בסוס פרעה ברכבו ובפרשיו בים, וישב אדוני עליהם את מי הים. ובני ישראל הלכו ביבשה בתוך הים. ותיקח מרים הנביאה אחות אהרון את התוף בידה, ותצאנה כל הנשים אחריה בתופים ובמחולות, ותען להם מרים, שירו לאדוני כי גאו גאה, סוס ורוכבו רמה בים.
יש כוח. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam, nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. My father and my grandfather were on my shoulders.
I don't think we have a.
Can we invite David Silverman to be the Hagbah, the second Hagbah?
It's
no?
a.
No, you're
It's
passing?
a.
We're not,
it's
you're
a
not
gentle
looking at it.
Hagbah.
It's a gentle Hagbah, yeah. Would someone like to be the Golel or Golelets? Audrey and Lyon, for example.
So we don't even have to lift it.
Yeah, you're just going to kind of right. Okay. So you can just put your arms around it, yeah. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael ad yad
Shema beni musar avicha ve'al titosh Torat imecha. Shema beni musar avicha ve'al titosh Torat imecha. Torah, Torah, mivalanu Moshe, morasha, morasha, kehilat Yaakov. Torah, Torah, mivalanu Moshe, morasha, morasha, kehilat Yaakov. We can be seated. Okay. I'd like to just complete the biblical readings for today with just a little bit of the Haftara. We'll turn to the Haftara for the 7th day of Pesach, which is in your Plaut Chumash. It's page 1467 in the newer version, or 1662 in the older. We're hearing from chapter 22 of 2 Samuel, chosen for this day to be a companion with the Shirah, the song in the Torah, now a song in the Haftara, this time a song of David, which in a sense is also an echo of the Psalms of David that we had in Halal. Again, anyone who's comfortable to chant with me, I'm just going to go through the opening and the closing of the Haftara. Join me in the opening bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'nevi'ei ha'emet b'tzedek. Would anybody be willing to come sit next to David so he can see the text also? Anyone? Danny's coming. Vaydaber David l'Adonai et divrei hashira hazot bayom hitzil Adonai oto mikaf kol oivav umikaf Shaul. Vayomar Adonai sal'i umtsudati umefalti li Elohei tzuri echese bo Magini v'keren ishi miskabi umenosi meshi'i mechamas toshieni Meulal ekra Adonai umeoivai ivashea Ki afafuni mishpere mavet nachale belial ya'atuni Chevle she'ol sabuni kidmuni mokshe mavet Betzar li ekra Adonai ve'el Elohai ekra vayishma me'echalo koli ve'shavati be'oznav. And now skipping to the closing passages, starting on 1470 in the new, 1665 in the older, to chapter 22, verse 47. Chai Adonai uvaruch tzuri vayarum Elohei tzur ishi ha'el hanoten nekamot li umorid amim tachteni umotzi me'oivai umikamai trom emeni meish chamasim tatzileni Al ken odcha Adonai bagoyim uleshimcha azamer migdol yeshuot malko ve'oseh chesed limshicho leDavid uleZaro adolam Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Tzor kol ha'olamim, tzadik bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'medaber u'mekayem, shekol devarav, emet v'tzedek. Skipping ahead, al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nevim, ve'al Yom Hashabbat hazeh, ve'al Yom Chag ha'matzot hazeh, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לששון ולשמחה ולכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת וישראל והזמנים. Excuse me. Before we turn to Yisker, I just want to check in with Harry and with David. Are you comfortable to hold? You're fine with the Torah? Harry? Yes? You're okay? Okay. So as we said now a few times this morning, we take extra time today to remember the ones who have been dear to us in our lives, who aren't in this realm with us anymore, but who are very much part of our consciousness, part of our legacy. So let's invite all those memories into the room now. And we're going to begin by inviting Luther Jett to the Bima to offer his own poem, an original poem of his, in memory of his sister Sally, who passed just this past week.
The Dreaming House. The children who grew in that house now dark, who rambled over field and sunbright hill, are gone to shadowed streets. They left their mark beside the stone-bound path. The air is still. With morning, there will come the song of birds to break the silent reverie of night. Unspoken thoughts give birth to living words as larks and sparrows in their joy take flight. And then the long locked door at last shall creak upon its hinge. The wind will stir the dust that lingers on the sill. The walls will speak as dawn revives the quick and wakes the just. This is the dream that murmured, age is gone. Our end is not in twilight, but in dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Luther. Turn with me, please, in the Siddur to page 637. I'd like to chant with you the final verses from Psalm 90 that are offered here as part of our Yisker prayers, and especially this verse, Limnot Yamenu, page 637. Limnot Yamenu, to count our days, as we're doing especially during this season between Pesach and Shavuot, as we land today with the 6th day of the count, to count every day, which death teaches us to do. Page 637. Limnot Yamenu, Limnot Yamenu, Limnot Yamenu ken hoda venavi levav chokhmah. Limnot Yamenu ken hoda venavi levav chokhmah. Teach us to treasure each day. Teach us to treasure each day, that we may open our hearts to your wisdom. Oh, teach us to treasure each day, that we may open our hearts to your wisdom. Oh, teach us to treasure each day. Treasure each day. Teach us to treasure each day. Treasure each day. Teach us to treasure each day. Invite everyone now to stand. There's a short formula on page 638 to help focus our minds on our particular personal memories. We can use that as a doorway to finding those images in our memories that we want to allow forward right now. You're invited to stay with your own thoughts and memories, the images you have in your mind's eye. To hold on to them, I'll continue now with El Male, page 639. El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bameromim, Hamte Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashchina, B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezor Arakia Mazhirim, Lenishmot Yakirenu Kedoshenu, Shalchu Leolamam. Ana Barachamim, Hastirem Betzel Kenafecha Leolamim, Utzror Bitzror Achayim Et Nishmatam, Adonai Unachalatam. And together we'll chant. Ve'anuchu ve'shalom, ve'anuchu ve'shalom, Ve'anuchu ve'shalom, ve'anuchu ve'shalom, ve'anuchu ve'shalom, ve'anuchu ve'shalom, ve'anuchu ve'shalom al mishkavam. V'nomar amen. Join me, please, page 641. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us. Excuse me. I want to just acknowledge those recent losses in our own community, just in the last 30 days. Rick Talisman, remembering his father, Harold Talisman. Nancy Pottishman, remembering her father, Richard Pottishman. Tanya Alteras, remembering her father, Isaac Zev Alteras. And Luther Jett, remembering his sister, Sally Jett Logan. And those who are observing Yortzeit specifically this week, Nadia Shukman, Leon Glazer, Lenore Malikan, George Graff, Irene Schonzeit, Audrey Beck, Joseph Boyers, Edward Robinson, William Levin, Reuven Cohen-Raz, Anna Groj, Alex Pastor, J. Robert Baer, Natalie Morrison, Victor Blumenstick, Doris Nelson, Louise Goldblum, Louis Feldman, Minna Rosenberg, Valentine Fuentes, Greta Vaughn, Claire Sackstein, Barry Sharp, Carol Pally Samuels, Emily Boyers, Billy Tannenbaum, Ruben Iglarsh, Judith Wendrow, Kate Miller Finkelstein, Rose Brunel, Evelyn Reinstein, Estelle Olick. The Kaddish is on page 643. And invite all those who are in mourning or observing a Yortzeit or remembering someone today to please join in. And I ask us to do it this way, to invite those who are mourners this week to begin first aloud, and then everyone else who would like to join at the communal verse and continue from there. So first, just the mourners for this particular time. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru ameh. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam u'amei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya v'chaim, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, u'ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru amen. So that we could please remain standing, holding on to our memories, invite Joan and Bob Spiritus to the Bima to return the Sifrei Torah. And we'll continue back on page 441. ובנוחו יאמר שוב אדוני רבבות אלפי ישראל כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזובו עץ חיים היא למה תחזיק As to stay standing and come to our closing prayers, page 445. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shenatan lanu Torah emet, v'chaye olam nata betochenu, v'anachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה השמיים. כן נקווה לך כי המלכות שלך היא לא מעט, תמלוך בכבוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, Ask us to be seated for a moment. It's a pleasure to invite Scott Arnold forward. Greetings from our board and announcements, I believe.
And it is a pleasure to welcome Rabbi Rachel back to the Bima. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. If there are any visitors here today and you want to introduce yourselves, that would be great. People can greet you after the service. Anybody? Okay. Upcoming events, the big thing is the homecoming retreat, end of May, Memorial Day weekend. This sign-up has been ongoing. This is the last couple of days for early bird rates, so if you haven't signed up, please do so right away. There'll be a full schedule posted next week, but some of the things will be additional It will be educational sessions with the rabbis, Rachel, Sid, and Fred, creative arts programs led by Kay Abrams, Barb Richmond, and Naomi Weintraub, a bike ride, a DJ Saturday night, dancing, so it's going to be a lot of fun, a big party. And it's going to be here. So that's why it is the homecoming. Next Sunday, we have a lot going on, several programs, Shemitah and Equity, Race and Reparations from 3 to 5, and that will be a hybrid program here at Adat Shalom and available on Zoom. There's a community-wide Yom Hashoah Commemoration event sponsored by the Jewish Community Relations Council. That's an online event next Sunday at 1 o'clock. May is Haitian Heritage Month, and we're celebrating 10 years of the Adat Shalom partnership with Pastor Johnny and the NICL school in Haiti. There's going to be a gala celebration next Sunday evening at Giselle's Creole Cuisine, a restaurant in Silver Spring, if you'd like to join. Contact Rabbi Sid or Greg Shofar for more information or the listserv. Thought someone wanted to add something. Finally, there's going to be a blood drive on May 15th. There'll be there's a blood shortage here in the area, and the Children's National Medical Center will hold a blood drive on May 15th right here. You can register via Social Solidarity, and conveniently enough, the same day you can come back, and it will be our annual meeting and a barbecue later Sunday afternoon. So lots going on over the next week and several weeks. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Scott. Thank you. I just want to add a plug for tuning in to the Yom Hashoah Commemorations that Scott just mentioned. It's, with each passing year, we're aware that the number of people who are still living who were eyewitnesses to that particular cataclysmic event in Jewish history is diminishing, and so it's on us to hold on to those memories. And I can say from personal experience, the online presentation last year was incredibly moving and profound, so I want to encourage us to tune in. I also want to just mention that this weekend there are all kinds of Earth Day celebrations and not commemorations, that's not the right word, celebrations and observances going on. Rabbi Fred was here with us and just till a few minutes ago, and he dashed out to be part of one of those on the mall. So in a community that has had a special interest and passion for creation care. I want to just highlight that as we close our Shabbat and close our festival. I believe the Talmud says that pizza is to be eaten at, I believe it's 8 p.m. tonight. Sea salt, get it? It's from the sea, crossing the sea, sea salt. Okay, I try, but join me for Kiddush, and then there's a Pesach Kiddush waiting for us outside. Please rise. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו. סברי חבריי, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. the holy paper cup. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. ושמחת בחגך והיית שמח, ושמחת בחגך והיית שמח,